Hey there, crystal lovers. Ashley Levy here with the Love and Light School of Crystal Therapy, and I thought I would just come have a quick discussion and informal chat about crystal properties and crystal meanings. This is a question I feel like has been coming up a lot lately from people. They want to know, okay, where exactly do these crystal properties come from anyway? Because you might go read one book and read about amethyst or rose quartz and it'll say one thing, and then you go consult another source, maybe another book or a blog post or a video, and it could say something totally different. Sometimes some of the things overlap, but there can be quite a big discrepancy. So where do these crystal properties actually come from? And then why do they differ between different sources? Why is there the confusion here? This is something I get asked all the time. So first, let's talk about, and hello to everyone, let's talk about where these properties actually come from, because there can be a really wide range of ways that authors like myself get our information about crystals. So if you've been following the school for a while, you know me, you know my work, you know I'm a published author. I've written many books about crystals and crystal healing. I teach courses about crystal healing. So when I'm sharing about crystals, where am I getting this information? And other authors like Nicholas Pearson and Judy Hall, where are they all getting their words from, their properties, their meanings about crystals? Where does it come from? So, and thank you all for enjoying this necklace. This is from a beautiful person on Instagram, xtwee. I'll have to put a link because it has a little lepidolite moon. I love this piece so much. So where do these crystal properties come from? Well, they come from a few places. The first place that many authors turn to is historical sources, historical references to crystals. So we can find them in places like the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We can find them in some classical writers like Theophrastus on stones. We can find them from Pliny the Elder, from Hildegard von Bingen, and many, 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 many other sources. So there are a lot of written cases to support traditional use of crystals throughout history, but we can't approach our use of crystals in the same way that many ancient peoples did, first and foremost because some of the practices promoted were dangerous, especially when working with toxic stones and that kind of thing. But secondly, sometimes we've just learned a little bit more about how things work that way in terms of, especially when crystals were used medically. So we don't use crystals medically at this point, right? We use them as holistic medicine, energy medicine to support any work that we're doing in our traditional medicine, right? They go along with it. They're complementary. They're not used to replace it. They're not used instead of it. They're complementary. So we can definitely look to those historical sources for some clues as to how we may work with our stones energetically now, right? So that is one place that people go. And there are some amazing authors out there, Nicholas Pearson, for example, that always researches the historical use behind crystals. Love his work. He's an amazing author. So that's one place that we get our crystal properties from. Another place we get our crystals properties from is a lot simpler, and that's just based on the color of the stone. So there is a lot of scientific evidence out there to support how color can affect our mood, right? They say that yellow can make you hungry, and red can make you agitated, and blue can be very calming. Well, the same goes for when we're working with crystals and other items, right? So we bring that color frequency, that vibration into our aura or energy field, and just by seeing that stone, by interacting with the stone, by holding the stone, we're picking up on that same energy. So color can be a great indicator for some of the properties, meanings, or qualities that a crystal might have. That's one great way to just get a general idea of what a stone might do for you or how you might work with it. But it's not the end-all be-all. You can't just learn everything you need to know about a stone based on its color. There are some other things as well. For example, the chemical composition. The chemical composition can give us a clue as to how to work with that crystal energetically. For example, if we know that iron is an important part of our circulatory system, of our blood, then we might make the leap that a stone with a heavy iron content like pyrite or hematite could also be good for supporting our physical health and our circulatory system. Again, doing this energetically. But this is kind of how we can look at the chemical composition of a stone for some clues about how it might affect us energetically. But I'd have to say the main place that we get our information about crystal properties and crystal meanings is through personal experience. So it's very, very subjective. It's going to be different for each person. And this is why when you consult different sources about the same stone, they might tell you different things. Some of the things that we often see in common are based on the color, the historical properties and lore, that kind of thing. But what we find in modern crystal healing is this great freedom of personal exploration when it comes to crystals. Now, some people don't like this, but I personally love it because truly, the greatest experience that you can have is your own. And when you connect with crystals, you're finding out how they work with you. And that can teach you so much more than a book could. But good books are great jumping off points, and they can also sometimes confirm what you're experiencing. And often when we see common properties listed for a stone, it's because they will frequently facilitate the same kinds of experiences or responses in many different people. So that's how we get, things like amethyst is good for meditation, rose quartz is good for love, blue calcite's good for communication. We get those things through these common experiences that people have. So when I say your personal experience, what do I mean here? Well, you might have an experience with a crystal in meditation, or during a crystal healing session, like a crystal layout, or through working with a crystal grid, or just carrying the stones with you, or in a dream about a crystal, or in an experience where you are working as a healer to serve a client or a friend or a family member. All of these things inform our knowledge about crystals, and this is very subjective, right? This is very, very subjective because we are all unique beings and our crystals are all unique, and they give us so much to enjoy and so much to be curious about and so much to explore and play with, and that's one of the great things about them. So if you have an experience with a crystal, say you work with like a really, a crystal that's thought to be really high vibe, high energy, like aqua aura quartz, and for you that stone is really grounding and it helps really get you in your body, don't second guess that just because you've never read it in a book anywhere. Your experience is the most valid thing that you have, more than anything else that you can read, watch, anything. And this is part of like the way that I like to teach about crystals and the way that I like to share about crystals. And there are quite a few students here from my Crystal Healing Certification program, and they'll tell you I'm always encouraging them to use their intuition, to listen to their experience, to learn from their experience. I can give you some amazing jumping off points, but ultimately your experience and your connection with your crystals is such a huge part of this work. And so, although I think it's normal to want to turn to people that we view as experts on a subject, right? That's a normal way that we approach learning about anything new. I think it's okay to listen to that, learn as much as you can, take all of these things into account, and then integrate that with your personal experience, with what you've learned through your own work with crystals, through having talks or discussions with your friends, with people that you know that are into crystals, right? And this is like one of the cool things about crystal healing is that it is so personal. And I find that really empowering. And when we start to trust that and work with it, we really build our confidence in our work with crystals. And someone asked me to repeat some of the books that I mentioned. So some of the historical writings about crystals, we can find mentions of crystals in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is a place where there are many references to crystals. Theophrastus You can find his work, which is called On Stones. You can still find versions of this translated into many, many languages. I'm pretty sure the original was probably in Latin, but you can find it in English. There is many different works by Hildegard von Bingen about herbs, animals, crystals. You can find Pliny the Elder, I can't remember what his thing was called, but he had a whole section of it that was about stones. Pliny the Elder, a very prolific writer about all things in the natural world. So there are many, many resources still that you can find. And then there are other books that kind of have already done some of the work for you and pulled together some of that information. And actually, I guess I can take you for a walk over to my bookcase. We were just talking about this in my last Q&A night that I do with my students over at the school, but let me move my drum first of all, and then let me flip my camera around and I can show you a couple of my favorite books about the history of crystal healing, the historical use of crystals. Okay, so this is my crystal healing library, or much of it, not all of it, but this is an excellent book, Crystals, Healing, and Folklore by David Rankine. This book, I believe, is out of print. I think one of my students just let me know about that the other day. So this is an excellent resource, though, very, very good if you can find a used copy. There are more books down here, and sorry, this cabinet's messy, but I have a lot of my divination stuff in here. This book right here, Gem and Mineral Lore by Paul Barrel. This is another very good book. This one is probably also out of print. It's a little bit older, but it references a lot of really cool things, and it seems to be well researched. And then there's a really interesting book right here called Crystal Legends. And of course I can't open a cabinet without showing you a pumpkin. I have pumpkins everywhere because I love them. This is Crystal Legends by Moira Caldecott. So this one pulls more from mythology rather than from history, but think about how myth plays such an important role in the evolution of who we are as human beings, right? Myth and story is so integral. And so it makes sense that crystals, of course, would even find themselves at the center of certain myths and stories and legends. And so this book, Crystal Legends by Moira Caldecott, really kind of breaks down these references to crystals in these different myths. So there are some great resources. And again, you can go straight to some of the historical resources as well, rather than relying on someone who's already compiled them for you. This is an excellent translation of Hildegard von Bingen's work. This is by Priscilla, I keep calling her Patricia, by Priscilla Throop. Priscilla Throop was the translator, and this is Hildegard von Bingen's Physica. And I can show you inside of this book, there's a whole section on crystals. So this is really cool because I'm interested in a lot of these things, and it has plants, elements, trees, stones, fish, birds, animals, reptiles, metals. So it's really, really complete. And again, the way that people used to work with stones isn't always going to apply to how we would work with stones today for safety reasons, first and foremost. But again, we've just kind of changed our understanding about this a little bit as well. But this can be a great jumping off point for understanding some of those properties and meanings and traits and where they come from. Okay, so I hope that gave you a great understanding of learning a little bit more about where these crystal properties come from, how we get them, and how they've kind of developed and grown, and especially in this modern age of crystal healing, which really since about the 1970s or 1980s on the early end, just how much this has grown. I know when I first started working with crystals, professionally, which was back in 2007, there were far fewer resources than there are today. And I feel like new books about crystal healing get published literally probably every month, if not every week. There are so many titles with so many great diverse viewpoints about how we can work with them, why we would work with them, and all of that adds to the richness of the tapestry that is crystal healing. So I hope that this video helped you. If you want to learn more like this, I'll be opening enrollment for my Crystal Healing Certification Program in just a few short weeks. It's going to be here before I know it. If you want to learn more about that or get on the wait list to be notified when enrollment opens up, just head to crystalhealerschool.com. Thanks again so much for watching, and crystal blessings.